Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our second session today, the Bachelor of Science information session. If you haven't joined us before, my name is Sarah Chisholm. I'm an admissions counselor at Mount A. And we have with us here today 3 Bachelor of Science students that are eager to answer your questions. So I will hand it off to Claire to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Clare Maguire. I've just finished a 4th year of a BSc in psychology with honors. So I just finished my honors thesis, and I'm going to come back around for 1 more year in 5th year and convocate in 2021. And I'm from Truro, Nova Scotia.
Awesome. Thanks, Claire. Everett? Uh-oh.
Oh, he's frozen, I think.
Oh, yeah, my name's
There we
Everett
go.
Patterson. I'm originally from Moncton, New Brunswick.
Uh-oh. Just give him a second. Oh, okay. He'll probably come back in a second. So, oh, there he is. Hi, Everett.
So
Do you want to try that again? Yeah.
yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, my name's Everett Patterson. I've graduated. So I just graduated from a double major in math and physics. I'm originally from Moncton, New Brunswick. So it's not too far away from Sackville, and I'm back home with the fam jam. Next year, I'm looking at doing a master's at the University of Waterloo in theoretical physics. And yeah, we'll see. Hopefully I can still answer questions. Hopefully I'm not too old for this yet.
Awesome. Thanks, Everett. And finally, Keeley.
Hi, everyone. My name is Keeley Barnable, and I'm going into my 3rd year at Mount A, and I'm majoring in biology and minoring in biochemistry. And I'm originally from Halifax, and I moved to Sackville in my 1st year. Very eager to explore and try something new.
Awesome. Thanks, Keeley. So before we begin our question session, I just want to direct everyone to our Q&A box. You can find it at the bottom of your screen. If you haven't joined us before, this is where you're going to ask your questions, and we'll go through them as they come in. So feel free to ask all the questions that you've been wondering about, whether it's about science courses, if you are wondering about any advice for 1st year, that sort of thing. And hopefully we'll be able to answer some of your questions. So we'll start out here. So someone is wondering, what is the biggest difference between high school and university, both school-wise and socially? Someone want to take that?
I can start.
Oh.
Okay, here.
Oh, okay.
I'll go first.
You go.
I found the course load was definitely, there was a big difference. I did IB in high school, so I was already used to a bit more of an advanced, heavier course load, but it was definitely different coming to university and having to do labs as well as a science student, because incorporating those into your schedule, they're not at the same time as your classes. So it kind of is a little bit more, and there's also work you have to do for your labs on top of coursework. So it definitely is different coming in from high school. And socially, I think for me, that was probably the biggest adjustment, because especially if you live in residence in your 1st year, you're surrounded by people a lot more than what you would be if you were living at home or off campus, because there's always people around, always people in the common room. And that can be really tempting if you're trying to study in your room and you can hear people outside, or if you know that there's an event. So I think a big adjustment for me was getting used to having people around me and kind of working in a bit more social time, and on top of having to schedule study time as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Keeley. Everett, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think I'd echo mostly what Keeley said. The one comment maybe that I'll make is, if you've done the highest level of sciences offered at your high school, there'll probably be some overlap in your 1st semester of science courses. So I know that like the grade 12 chemistry that I did at my high school had some overlap with the chemistry one and similarly with physics and math. So I think the university is aware that there is a transition, and they try to facilitate that transition. So if you've taken those courses in a high school, you should be well prepared for going into university. And yeah, there are more courses, there are labs, and it will ramp up quickly, but you'll have like hopefully a week or two of, oh yeah, this is familiar. I've seen these words before. I've seen these concepts before.
Awesome, great point, Everett. Is there anything anyone else wanted to add on?
I found the biggest difference academically between high school and university was in university, I was allowed to really pick my courses and I had a lot more choice. And like I had a little bit of choice in high school, but like coming into university and like even like I could take a BSc, I could take a BA, and then looking at all the different science courses I was able to choose from, like I really was able to sort of like tailor my courses to my interests. And that for me, like even though there was you know, a significantly heavier workload because university work is sort of different in nature from high school work, even though the workload was a little bit heavier, I found I enjoyed it a lot more because I got to, you know, choose the things that I was really interested in.
Awesome, thanks, Claire. So our next question, a student is wondering, what are some tips you have for note-taking in science courses?
Can I start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. First, I would say like really get acquainted with the style of the lecture beforehand. So like if you know the prof is somebody who will post the lecture slides beforehand or who will post the lecture slides sort of on Moodle after the class, then you can go into class and really pay attention to the lecture and not worry about copying down the notes on the PowerPoint and just copy down sort of like all the different extra stuff that the prof might add on to it. But you know, if that's not the case for a certain class and you really do have to sort of like copy them down as they go, I would say it's really useful to develop a shorthand for, you know, lots of terms that like come up, like, you know, if the word biochemistry or enzymology is going to come up all the time, maybe just put like B or E. Like in psychology, there's you know, like behavior comes up and that's a long word, so I just put BX a lot of the time. The other thing is if you find you are a little bit slower at writing by hand and the prof is somebody who will allow laptops, I find I'm able to type a lot faster than I can write, but I know different classes differ and different profs differ.
Awesome, thanks, Claire. Everett or Keeley, did you want to add on to that?
Sure. I would say I agree with Claire that it really depends on like getting used to how the prof does their personal delivery of class notes, because I've had some profs who will post their notes. I have some that just write on chalkboard with chalk, and some profs that don't want you taking pictures in their class as well. So definitely use the first week of classes to kind of see exactly how they're delivering the material and see what works for you, because like Claire said, there are some classes that I found I could type a lot faster in. So if I was allowed to use my laptop, I would do that. And some classes where you're writing out equations or diagrams, and it'd be a lot more efficient to write out your notes by hand. But yeah, definitely get used to it and kind of like it takes a bit of adjustment. Like there are some classes I would start out typing my notes and after a couple weeks I would switch over to handwriting, but it's definitely really dependent, but do kind of figure it out and do what's best for you.
Awesome, thanks, Keeley. Everett, did you have anything you wanted to add on?
I think they've covered it all, yeah.
Awesome, thanks. All right, so I'm seeing a couple of questions here about what courses students should take and when they should take them. So I'll just sort of blanket answer here. If you haven't already, I strongly recommend that you reach out to one of our academic advisors. We do have 3 on campus that are ready and willing to help you. You can reach them by emailing them at advisor@mta.ca, or you can book a virtual advising appointment at mta.ca/advising. As I said, they're wanting to help you and they are a resource that is there for you, and you should definitely take advantage of that as soon as you can. They have all the information about when you should be taking your bio course or your physics course or your distribution courses as well. So feel free to drop them a line and they'll be able to get you all that information for you. Our next question is, are you allowed to use graphing calculators, or would you recommend getting one or just using a regular scientific calculator?
I think it probably depends on the discipline. So with my math and physics background, graphing calculators are kind of cool and fun to play around with, but they're not going to be allowed in tests. So they want you to have non-programmable calculators without any memory function. So you will have to learn to kind of see what a graph looks like and be able to draw graphs yourself without relying on the calculator. So for math and physics, not necessary, and in fact, you won't be allowed for testable material.
Awesome, thanks, Everett.
Yeah, I think
Yep,
I would have to agree. Yeah, sorry. I think I would have to agree with that. There was I think I only really used my graphing calculator that I had one from high school already, but I think I only really used it once or twice. And for the biology, like for the biostatistics courses that I've taken, the most advanced calculator we were even allowed then was just a dollar store calculator, because they want you to be able to figure out how to do a lot of statistical stuff on your own. So I mean, definitely have a scientific calculator if you're doing any sort of calculations, but if you don't already have a graphing calculator, I wouldn't say that you need to go out and buy one. There might be a way you could, even if you needed one, you could get one lent to you through the school. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't say spend a whole bunch of money, because for biology, I haven't particularly used one.
Awesome, thanks, Keeley. So our next question, it looks like it's directed towards Keeley, but I'm not sure, Claire, Everett, if either of you took IB in high school, but Samantha is saying, Keeley, I have taken the IB diploma as well. Did you take the advanced credits awarded, or did you redo your courses in first year?
Okay, so this is a question I actually had going into my first year as well, because I actually only got back the list of credits that could be transferred a week or so before I started my classes. And when I found out I got the credits, I reached out to Dr. Cockshutt and just asked what her opinion was there. And I think in general, what they recommend is that you should redo the classes that you are hoping, because I was hoping on majoring in bio right from the start. So I was told that it would be a good idea to retake the biology courses. And from my experience with it, you don't need to redo them. Like, I think it was stuff that I had a strong understanding from high school, but it was definitely a good reinforcement from what I had learned in high school, and also kind of made like the adjustment period of first year a little bit easier for me as well, because I was kind of figuring out a lot of stuff socially. Like I said, it was my first time really being around people. I was doing a full course load. I was trying different classes. So it was kind of nice to have the familiar subject again in that terms. And it, like I said, really strengthened my background for the next coming years. And I would say, but I did take a lot of my other credits. So I used some of them for distribution, because I'm not a huge math fan. So for example, I took my math credit that I got, and that was awesome. So I would definitely recommend taking the credits that you can, but perhaps if you're majoring in something, and it might be worthwhile looking into redoing the class.
Awesome, thanks, Keeley. Claire, Everett, did either of you want to add on to that?
Sure, I'd love to. I actually I did full IB in grade 11, and then in grade 12, I took the IB certificate. So I think it was just, I took HL French 12 in grade 12. And so coming into Mount A, I had 6 first year French credits. And with my French minor, it's a little bit of an interesting situation in the French department, because you don't necessarily, like starting in the French department, you don't necessarily start at first year level courses. You'll take a placement test, and then they'll place you into sort of whichever level. So I had 6 like 1,000 level credits, so 6 first year credits for my IB course. And then I tested into second year French. So I started my minor at sort of a second year level, but then I still had those 6 credits to sort of like fill out some spaces in my minor anyway. If I had tested into first year French, I would have had the option to, I think, take the courses or take the credits, which would have been really nice. So as it is, I sort of got some extra credits from that.
Awesome. Thanks, Claire. Everett, anything you wanted to add on?
Yeah, I think I'd echo Keeley on the front of, if you're majoring in a field, it can be beneficial to ease the transition by taking the courses at university. And I had some transfer credits and I took them. And so I skipped essentially first year math at Mount A. And it was definitely a bit of a sudden adjustment to be in the second year course and realize that having taken intro calc 1 and 2 at a different institution, I didn't have, they assumed I had knowledge because they assumed I'd taken it here, but I didn't necessarily have that background knowledge. So I definitely needed to backpedal a little and work extra hard to fill in the holes, versus if you retake the course, worst case scenario is that you've seen it all already and you get a great grade and you can spend that time focusing on other courses. Or you learn stuff and you fill in those holes that you didn't know you had. So I definitely feel as though retaking credits in an area of study that's of interest to you doesn't hurt.
Awesome. Thanks, Everett. All right, so Everett, I think this one will probably be directed at you as well. So Zoe's wondering if you took a double major in all sciences, so math and physics in your case, did you find you were able to explore as many arts courses as you wanted, or did it get monotonous to do almost all science?
So it definitely restricts what you can do on the side, because it's a lot of courses that you need to take for your degree. I didn't feel particularly restricted. I admittedly did have, as I mentioned, 3 courses credited from another university, so I didn't need to, I had that much more wiggle room. But I found I could afford 1 arts course a semester, which is something that I really valued, to take my mind off of all the math and physics and those numbers. I wasn't able to say minor in any of those other fields, but I feel as though I scratched the surface well and was able to glean insight into various fields in the arts, which was nice.
Awesome. Thanks, Everett. All right. So our next question, sort of changing gears a bit. So what tips do you have for planning what courses to take in your first year? So I'll take this one again. What I would strongly recommend doing is reaching out to an academic advisor. They are there to help you. I'm not sure if these 3 have had appointments with our academic advisors and can speak to how helpful that is, but it's something that when I was a student, I met with an academic advisor at least once a year, sometimes twice, so once per semester. They are definitely there to help you. They know what requirements you need for your degree, so they'll be able to help you plan what courses you want to take. Our next question is, do you have any tips for organization for first year? Feel free to raise your hand when you want to answer.
I'll go. For
Sure.
organization, I'll say I definitely liked to keep an agenda. I know this MassU, like the student union at Mount Allison, usually gives out agendas, or if you're someone who likes having like a colorful planner as well, and you like those sort of things, I think I'm definitely the type of person that if I don't write something down, there's a good chance I'll forget about it. So whenever I had an assignment or something that the teacher said would be due in the near future, I would write it down in the agenda. Or even because I was playing rugby for Mount Allison in my first year, and so I knew I was going to have a pretty busy schedule. So whenever I knew I was going to have a meeting or a game or practice, I would write that down in my agenda as well, just so I knew when I had free time and when I was going to be tight for time. Because when your schedule starts getting really full, you want to know where you have free time to study and when you have free time to hang out with your friends or do other activities. So definitely being able to write it down and see what I have to do in the next week or so is something that I would recommend doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Keeley. Claire, did you have anything you wanted to add on to that?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with Keeley on that front. Like I think in the first few years of my degree, I used the MASU agenda, and then there was this really cool workshop last year on bullet journaling, and then I got really into that. So sort of like designing your own planner. So I'll have like my monthly calendar, and then like all the things for my different courses that I have to get done this month. And then, you know, what that looks like week by week, what that looks like day by day. And then as I'm in class, like anytime the prof sort of like assigns something, I'll like make a little note, like in that little slot for the course, like here's what I have to do tonight, here's what I have to do this week, sort of thing. The other thing I would recommend, like right off the start of the semester, is know your schedule. Have a copy of your schedule that you can bring with you, ideally a paper copy, because, you know, if I'm like in the middle of campus trying to like log into my Connect, trying to find my schedule, and like like it is a little bit tricky that way, but like I would recommend knowing your schedule. In the week before classes, like during orientation week in my first year, I went and I visited all the different buildings to find my classrooms, so I wasn't as lost as I could have been. I still got lost a few times because, you know, you got to get used to things. But yeah, no, I would say like know your schedule, know where your classes are, and then absolutely, like Keeley said, like keep an agenda and like really make sure you know where all of your time is. Because with a full science course load, there are like, I think I had 5 courses in my first semester. One of them was French, and every other course had a lab. So I had 5 courses and 4 labs. And once those lab hours start sort of piling up, there's, you know, you have to know exactly where your time is to get your coursework done, for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Claire. Everett, did you have anything you wanted to add on to that?
Yeah, I'll maybe share my tip for keeping my schedule together. So like Claire, I also spent orientation week walking around campus and trying to figure out where the various classes I was taking were gonna be taking place. So I had a piece of paper on which I kind of drew out my schedule and had like blocks for my various courses, and I took a picture of that and used it as my phone background for each semester. So I'd update it each semester, and that way, if I did ever forget or get lost or whatever, I could just turn my phone on and I could see where I was supposed to be, what I was supposed to be doing. And I found that really helpful, especially in the first few months. It takes a while to get adjusted, and that was my big break.
Awesome. Thanks, Everett. All right, so our next question is, so we're expecting a lot of online labs and classes this year. Do you have any suggestions for tackling online science classes or online classes in general?
I could speak a little bit on this because after sort of all my classes like ended in March, sort of like were rather, meeting in person ended in March. Different profs did very different things. So for my history of psychology class, we had recommended readings and we had little modules that we were supposed to work through sort of on our own and just sort of like work through all that. So that kind of stuff I sort of, I found that like organizing my time really well was really important, because it was sort of like there was about a month left in the end of semester. There was 5 big chunks of things and they were all due sort of on the same day. It was like just one final paper and one final exam. So I found really like scheduling out my time and sort of like making a little sort of routine for myself with that course was helpful. And then I had another class who posted, the prof uploaded the PowerPoints with a voiceover. And I found what was really helpful for that was to actually Zoom a friend in the class and do them together. So like one of us would screen share and we'd take notes together, and that way we could sort of talk over stuff and try and figure stuff out on our own if we were a little bit confused. And then at the end of it, we would sort of like compile all our questions and send them into the prof. And then my third class, we actually did Microsoft Teams meetings. So it was like a big, long, like 3-hour seminar every week. And we all would just like, the prof was right there. And then we could sort of chat with them. So I think like it really depends on the format of the online class. And as well, like I would 100% recommend like finding other people who are in the class. Because for me, like that sort of like peer-to-peer support in my different classes has been really helpful when I'm having trouble understanding something.
Awesome, thanks, Claire. And I'll just add something on to that. If anyone was in our session yesterday for academic support, one of the suggestions that we had was, if you're not already in the incoming student Facebook group, to join that as soon as you can so that you can maybe connect, find out who's in what classes, so that if there is an online course that you're not sure, oh, is this person in it, is this person not in it, you can connect that way with students, and then you can set up a group meeting like Zoom, like Claire was saying, or a Microsoft Teams meeting, that sort of thing, or just chat on Facebook about course content. And that's a really great way to get connected that's at your fingertips right now. Keeley or Everett, did either of you want to add anything on to that?
I'll add on and just say, from my experience from just finishing my second year online, I'd say something that I found really important was if I had an online class or the prof posted a PowerPoint at a certain time of week, I would really try to keep a routine. So I'm not exactly sure if you guys will have a blend of online and in-person classes, but for me, I found that if my professor was going to post the PowerPoint 3 times a week at 9:30 in the morning, as if it were a class, I would try to get up. And it's really easy now to just stay in your pajamas and watch from your bed, but I would definitely recommend getting up, get changed, like kind of keeping in the routine. And it was hard because sometimes like my professors wouldn't always post scheduled. Like I think some of the online classes don't necessarily follow a certain schedule now. So maybe just set aside a time during the week, like, okay, every Tuesday and Thursday, I'm going to spend an hour working on my biology course. And really, if there's any sort of assigned reading or assigned lecture, do it and don't put it off for later. Do it during your scheduled time, because it's really easy if you miss. It's the same as an in-person class. If you miss one class, it's really easy to build up, and you'll have multiple lectures you need to go through, multiple readings you'll have to do, and it's really hard to catch up when you're missing class. So stay on a routine is probably my best suggestion.
Awesome, thanks Keeley. Everett, did you have any tips for online courses?
I think I would echo, the comments made by Claire and Keeley. I have definitely not always, for some of my courses this past semester, I delayed and found myself trying to blow through way too much content in a very short period of time. And that did not, surprise, that didn't go well. For other courses, I did develop better habits where I had actually physical spaces in my house that were like, that was my physics space. And I went there and I did my problems, and I had group chats with all the classmates I had in those courses. And I found having other people to discuss the content with and say like, hey, did this not make any sense to you either? And sometimes they say, actually, that did make sense. Here's how you work it through. Or other times they said, no, that also didn't make sense. And then we can discuss it together and try to overcome our problems together. So I definitely think a collaborative approach is going to be really, really useful with online learning.
Awesome, thanks Everett. All right, so our next question is an interesting one. So to hear from each of you, what was your personal favorite first year course and what made them special?
I can jump in on this one.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I had a single favorite first year course. I think there were 2 courses that really stood out for me. They were both arts courses. So despite being a very science-focused person and in a very science-focused degree, I really enjoyed taking arts courses to change the pace of things. And so I was in Introduction to Literary Analysis course with the prof, Brad Simculet. And I was also in Introduction to Western Civilization with Dr. Bruce Robertson. And I had an interest in both of these topics, in English literature, but also in Western history, Rome, Greece, that sort of stuff. And I would recommend, so I'm not saying those courses are good for you, but I would say look into what the course is. So if you're interested in the course, you'll find it more fun. But 2, for introduction level courses, and especially courses that aren't necessarily in your area of study, I think the most important thing is finding a prof who's really good. if the prof is passionate and really good, the course will be fun and students will enjoy it. And so I know Dr. Robertson is somebody that has won many teaching awards at Mount A and is well known for being a great lecturer and really engaging. So I'd recommend you look around and ask people, hey, like, have you heard of any like exceptional profs? If you're taking a one-off course, I'd take it with one of those people.
Awesome, thanks Everett. Keeley or Claire, do either of you want to jump in on your favorite course from first year?
I'll add, yeah, for sure. So I think my favorite course in my first year was probably also not a science course, just because it was a little exciting to have something else and something very new. So the course was called Death and Afterlife in Asian Religions. And so, yeah, so that one's quite popular, I think, at Mount Allison. And I took it for a distribution, and you're going to have to take a distribution course. So like Everett said, you might want to look into what you're interested in and kind of, I mean, I didn't know I was interested in this class, but it definitely looked very exotic. And I had heard a lot about Dr. Andrews, who teaches it. And like Everett said, I heard a lot of great things, that Dr. Andrew was really good at delivering her the course, and she definitely was, and she was a great professor, and it was a really, really fun and engaging class to be in. And it was a chance to take a course with it was in my second semester, so I took the course with some of my friends that weren't in sciences with me. So it was just like nice to have a balance of something that wasn't, because I'd done pretty heavy science courses that semester otherwise. Like I think I was in linear algebra, chemistry, and physics that semester. So just having a bit of a fun, exotic class with a really engaging professor was a nice break from a heavy science load.
Awesome, thanks Keeley. Claire, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, well, I sort of have two answers to this. Because my favorite class that I took in first year was cell biology, because I started as a bio major. And I found that one was really, really cool because of the lab. First of all, I loved the lab instructor. Lori in the biology department is just absolutely excellent. It was really cool because she really sort of took us through very step-by-step how to write a lab report. So I really got to develop my writing skills. And then we did all sorts of really cool things. Like we like figured out our blood type in lab. We like took cheek cells, and we were able to like look at our own cheek cells under the microscope. And then I found the course material also really interesting. So even though I had a very, very heavy science course load, I was still just like super into cell bio. But the other half of my answer is my favorite like first year course that I've taken actually was also Death and the Afterlife in Asian Religions, because I took that this year for my distribution. And every so often in your degree, you're going to come across a course that's like a little bit life-changing, whether it's because of the material, like the concepts covered, or because of the prof. And I think it was like the combination of like all these very like broad sort of like universal human concepts, and then just like the sheer genius of like Dr. Susie Andrews was just like absolutely amazing. So I would recommend, I mean, like that course made me want to venture way further into the humanities, because I, typically have a more sort of sciencey course load. But yeah, so my favorite course that I took in first year was cell bio for the really cool lab component. And then my favorite first year course that I've taken was hands down Death and the Afterlife in Asian Religions. I would recommend it to anybody.
Awesome, thanks Claire. I also want to echo that. I didn't take Death in Asian Religions, but I took food practices in Asian religion with Susie Andrews as well, and that is also an excellent course, and I can confirm Susie Andrews is an excellent professor. So if you ever have a chance to take a course with her, I highly recommend it as well. All right, so our next question is, where did you find it easiest to study in Sackville? Is the library the best place, or is there other spots to go?
For me, the place that I studied the most in first year was my room. Actually, because I had a single room, so it was always, I could always make sure it was nice and quiet if I liked. But then there also was a study room in the basement of Bennett, which is where I lived. And then there also was a common room. And then over the past few years, I started studying more and more at the library. And it all depends on how you like to study and what you like that environment to be like. So there are certain things that I know I can do in the library and certain things that I know I can't. So, you know, I study on the main floor of the library, and that's one where, you know, if you've got friends in your class, you can sort of like go and like talk with them and do like group study and have it be sort of, you know, a little bit more talkative. But if I really have something that I have to just like put my head down and need absolute silence for, I will like find the computer off in the corner, put my headphones in, like try not to talk to anybody. Or, you know, if that's something that I can do in a quieter space, then I might sort of come home and use my room for that. But I think it depends on sort of what kind of study environment you're trying to create, because there's different ones on campus. And then I know like also different floors of the library are a lot quieter, but I tend to study on the main floor. So if any of you are like basement lib studiers, feel free to join in and sort of add to that.
Awesome. Thanks, Claire. Did anyone else want to add on to that?
Sure, I can add. I definitely agree that I kind of move around depending on what I'm doing. Like I'll definitely go to the basement of the lib if I have to do a reading and I need it to be super, super quiet. But I think my favorite study spot on campus is actually in the student center in the pond. So I'm not sure if you guys have been able to go to campus and do a tour, but the pond is the campus pub, and they have a solarium, so an area that's overlooks the football field, and there's a bunch of windows there. And I really like it there because I kind of like having something to look at and people watching, like you always see people walk by. I find it kind of keeps my mind engaged. And also my hands get cold really easily because I have a bit of a circulation problem. So I find having the sun come down is really nice. And they have benches there, so it's really comfy, and they have plugs and outlets, so you have access to Wi-Fi. It's super comfy. So especially getting close to finals, I would pack my bag and pack a lunch and kind of just set up on one of the benches in the solarium for the day. And I found it was a really awesome place. It can get noisy, so like I said, I kind of walk around depending on the events that are happening, but that was definitely my personal favorite spot.
Awesome. Thanks, Keeley. And Everett, what was your favorite place to study on campus? Uh-oh.
Yeah. For the first 2 years of my time at Mount A, I lived in Hunton House. And so my favorite spot to study while I was in residence was the Hunton House quiet study. So there was a loud study where we could do group work and whatever, and there were whiteboards. And then there was the quiet study, which was, yeah, it was a quiet study. So I'd go down there, bring whatever I needed, spend an hour, and then take a break and play ping pong, and then go back in for another hour and take another break and chat with friends. And that worked really, really well for me. Since being off campus, rather, I've had a few different places. I tried the main floor of the library where I got distracted by friends way too often. And I ended up finding a lab space in the Dunn building, which is the math and physics building. So when you're an upper year math and physics student, you get access to these lab spaces where you can do work and you're not going to be bothered by people who aren't in math and physics. So it's a great place to work with other students in your field on courses that you haven't.
Awesome. Thanks, Everett. So our next question, I know it will apply to Keeley. I'm not sure if it applies to Claire and Everett, but feel free to chime in. Emma is wondering, is it hard to balance sports and academics?
Okay, so I've definitely been someone who's always done sports, and even high school, I did a bunch of sports, and coming into university, I know I was definitely super excited to start up with the rugby team. And I think something that, I think it might depend on what sport you're playing, because rugby is a club team, and the level of commitment might be a bit more for a varsity team, or if you're playing an intramural sport, it might be a little bit less. But I know for club rugby, we still practiced 3 times a week and had a game once a week and a fitness session once a week. And our practices were 2 hours, so 3 times a week, which is quite a big commitment to have in the evenings when you get off, because you do a full day of class and then you probably only have half an hour before rugby, 2 hours of rugby, and then only a couple hours left to study before you're kind of beat out. So I think, and our coach definitely was big on commitment and wanted us to be at practice. And I think the biggest piece of advice that I got was that school always comes first, but definitely it's possible. So if you ever are having, like, university is a big time of figuring out how to juggle your extracurriculars on top of your schoolwork. And I found it, because it was something I was pretty used to doing. I didn't find the transition too hard, but definitely talking to some of the older students on the team was something that was helpful, because there was people who had crazy busy schedules, and they were doing other extracurriculars on top of their school and on top of rugby. So, and the older people on the team were always willing to help with any sort of organization problems that people were struggling with. So I think it's definitely possible. I would recommend, if you can do a sport, it helped me or almost organize my schedule better, because if I knew I had a free time to study, I wouldn't fool around if I knew that I had a rugby practice later, so I don't really have time to put off my work. It's something that you can work on, and yeah, definitely don't be afraid and don't avoid doing extracurriculars because you think you're going to be too busy. If it ends up being too busy for you, it's probably something you can decide later, but definitely try your best to stay involved in sports.
Awesome. Thanks, Keeley. Everett, did you want to add anything on to that?
Yeah. So I spent my first 3 years at Mount A as a varsity athlete on the soccer team, which was obviously quite the big time commitment. I think rugby is actually like fairly similar. Soccer was 4 times a week, evening practices, and then weekend games for the fall semester, a big chunk in the fall semester. So as soon as I arrived at Mount A, it was go, go, go. And I found it actually helped me create a good schedule early on. I mentioned that early on, courses can seem maybe not so hard because you've seen some of the content and there's review happening, but I was forced to start off the year with a really good schedule because I had these soccer practices. And so I needed to manage the time between labs and practices, and then after practices and before I went to bed to make sure I got my schoolwork done. So I think it's not too hard. Obviously, if you're taking on a bunch of other things, then it becomes more challenging. And in particular, as I became, like in my 3rd year, I was not only playing soccer, but I was TAing and I was involved in various things. And I decided, since my end goal is to be a prof and work in academia, I felt as though it was more worth my while to focus on my school. And so I stopped playing varsity level soccer. I took up club ultimate frisbee and played intramural soccer. So I was still able to be active, but I chose that my academic pursuits and attending conferences and stuff, which soccer didn't allow me to do, was more important in my final year than playing soccer. But I think I can also echo what Keeley said, that you're gonna, especially as a first year coming into a sports team, you'll get to interact with upper year students who can give you tips and tricks to study, and they'll be able to help you with courses and whatnot. So I definitely think overall it's a really positive experience to be on a varsity or a club sport, and there's always intramurals, which are a lot of fun with your residences.
Awesome. Thanks, Everett. Did anyone else have anything that they wanted to add on to that?
I didn't play, or I haven't been playing sports in my time at Mount A, but I was sort of in a similar position to Everett for a little bit, because in 2nd and 3rd year, I was the co-producer of the album that we put out. We put out sort of an album of original student music every year. And so in 2nd and 3rd year, what that looks like as the co-producer is you have to be in the studio and record everybody. So, you know, there were 4 to 5 studio sessions every week, which is about 2 hours a day. So anywhere between, like, depending on how many people signed up, anywhere from sort of 6 to 10 hours a week in the studio. And then one weekend in January, February, one sort of like 16-hour weekend where we do all the drums at once. And so I echo what like Keeley and Everett said, and that like you really like it really helps you know where your time is. And especially in that like you can sort of work with people who are in the same position as you. So, you know, for me, it was my other co-producer or co-producers, and we sort of were like, okay, how are we going to do this? What's the best way that we can sort of like balance our studies with all this time commitment? And so it also like really lets you know exactly how much time you have in your schedule. So like if I finish my classes at 2:30 and then I have a studio session 4:30 to 6:30, sometimes they run it late, sort of like 7:30, it's like, okay, I've got 2 hours to finish this lab, or I've got 2 hours to do this reading sort of thing and eat dinner. Then the other thing is like exactly like Everett said, like in my fourth year, I realized like, oh, okay, there are people sort of coming through the organization who have a little bit more production experience than I do, but I still really want to be involved in the album. And especially like I know that going into an honors degree, like with my thesis, I need to be spending, you know, the 10 to 12 hours I was spending in the studio doing work on my thesis, sort of, you know, like for me, it was preschools as a psychology student. So, you know, in the preschools in the morning, or, you know, reading or writing or sort of like working on that. So I was able to take a little bit of a backseat, and I became the manager on the album. I still was an artist on the album. So I'd be in the studio once or twice a month. So, you know, from 6 to 10 hours a week to 2 to 4 hours a month. And then otherwise I was doing behind the scenes work. So there was still a way for me to sort of stay involved with all the different things that I loved about it without having it be such a huge time commitment. And I was really more able to sort of focus on my academics.
Awesome, thanks Claire. So it looks like that's all the time that we have for today. So I just want to say thank you to our 3 panelists for joining us today. You guys were awesome. And thank you to all of our attendees who joined us today as well. You guys are asking some great questions, and if there is something that you asked that we weren't able to get to, or if you think of any questions after today, please feel free to shoot us a message at admissions@mta.ca. You also have the opportunity to speak with current student ambassadors via our Welcome to College platform. You can access that by going to our homepage, so mta.ca, and there's a little button that says chat with a student ambassador, and that will take you to our Welcome to College page where you can speak with them. Just a reminder that we have one more session coming up at 12 p.m. So in about 10 minutes for our Bachelor of Commerce students. If you are a science student, but you think you might want to do a minor in commerce or just want to see what is available to you, feel free to sign up. There's still time. Registration links were sent to your email earlier this week and last week. So feel free to join us at 12 p.m. today. Other than that, thanks to everyone for coming out, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. All right, bye guys.